program is supported by Bebeg Integra 3000 Plus, mixed pellet and grades. Iba ang laking Integra.
Hello, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching Eagle News International.
And I'm CJ Hero. Welcome to the program. On tonight's headlines.
Cherokee County Sheriff Frank Reynolds said during a press conference that the suspect in a series of shootings in the Atlanta area that left 6 Asian women dead has potentially sexual addiction and that the killings may not be racially motivated.
But the indicators.
An independent study commissioned by the Roman Catholic Church uncovered hundreds of cases of sexual violence committed by clergy and laymen in Germany's top diocese.
And Myanmar's ousted leader Aung San Suu Kyi will be hit with fresh corruption charges from the country's military junta, a decision slammed by her lawyer as groundless and illogical.
It's the hottest new exhibition in town, an immersive digital art experience filled with futuristic light installations that doubles up as a sauna complex.
First to the U.S., Cherokee County Sheriff Frank Reynolds said during a press conference that the suspect in a series of shootings in the Atlanta area that left 6 Asian women dead has potentially sexual addiction and that the killings may not be racially motivated. Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms declares that it is very likely that there would have been more victims yesterday had the suspect not been apprehended. Let's listen in.
He made indicators that he has some issues, potentially sexual addiction, and may have frequented some of these places in the past. It's still early, but the indicators right now are it may not be. It may be targets of opportunity. Again, we believe that he frequented these places in the past, and may have been lashing out.
He claims that these, and as the chief said, this is still early, but he does claim that it was not racially motivated.
That they determined that the suspect was on his way to Florida, I believe, and perhaps to carry out additional shootings. So again, it really speaks to the coordination and the quick response from law enforcement. For as tragic as this was on yesterday in Metro Atlanta, this could have been significantly worse.
The murders raised fears among Asian Americans. The violence comes at a time of extreme tension for the Asian American community. The number of attacks and hate crimes against Asian Americans has exploded since the beginning of the pandemic, according to anti-extremism groups. And activists lay some of the blame for that increase at the feet of former President Donald Trump, who repeatedly referred to the coronavirus as the China virus.
Anti-crime issues in New York is not that widespread. However, people feel unsafe. They worry. A lot of people don't even want to go to the subways, ride the subways.
我觉得就是对这次亚特兰大枪击案的遇难者的不幸感到非常的悲伤。那我觉得不管是谁，如果这样无辜付出生命的话，都是非常可惜的。所以希望以后不会有这样的事件再次发生。
This is a time for mourning and grief for many, many people in the Asian American community, for my wife Evelyn and me. But it's also a time for action. We have to call on our leaders to do more. Here in New York City, I've called for the full funding of the Asian Hate Crimes Task Force. This is not something that volunteers can be asked to address. If we recognize the gravity of this set of problems, we have to invest. We should be treating hate crimes as such. And make no mistake, these women were targeted on the basis of their race. It's also true of the woman in Flushing, of the man on the subway, of the restaurant worker. They're all targeted because of their race. We all know this, and we have to start acting like it as a government, as a people.
But I do want to say to our Asian American community that we stand with you and understand how this has frightened and shocked and outraged. But knowing the increasing level of hate crime against our Asian American brothers and sisters, we also want to speak out in solidarity with them.
Whatever the motivation here, I know that Asian Americans are very concerned because, as you know, I've been speaking about the brutality against Asian Americans for the last couple months, and I think it is very, very troublesome.
Meanwhile, the shooter, 21-year-old man identified as Robert Aaron Long, was apprehended about 150 miles south of Atlanta several hours after the shootings. When he was caught, Long was on his way to Florida, perhaps to carry out more shootings targeting some type of porn industry. It was Long's parents who contacted police after his photo was released on Tuesday, announcing he was a suspect, and they helped identify him. Authorities have charged Long with 4 counts of murder and 1 count of aggravated assault in the first of his 3 shootings, which took place in a suburb north of Atlanta, according to U.S. media. Additionally, Atlanta police said they have charged Long with 4 counts of murder in the subsequent attacks at 2 spas in the city. A former classmate said that Long's father was a youth minister or pastor, and Long was big into religion. Long was deeply involved with Crab Apple First Baptist Church, which he attended with his parents and younger sister, according to the news website Heavy.
In other news, an independent study commissioned by the Roman Catholic Church uncovered hundreds of cases of sexual violence committed by clergy and laymen in Germany's top diocese, according to its authors. The long-awaited 800-page report on the Cologne diocese found 202 perpetrators of sexual assault and 314 victims between 1975 and 2018, most of them under the age of 14, the attorney mandated by the church, Bjorn Gerke, told reporters. More than half of the victims were children under the age of 14, he said. A study commissioned by the German Bishops' Conference and released in 2018 showed that 1,670 clergymen had committed some type of sexual attack against 3,677 minors, mostly boys, between 1946 and 2014. However, its authors said the actual number of victims was almost certainly much higher. Each diocese in Germany has ordered a separate local investigation into abuse among its ranks. Germany's Catholic Church counted 22.6 million members in 2019, but the number is 2 million fewer than in 2010, when the first major wave of pedophile abuse cases came to light. The revelations, which mirror pedophile scandals in countries including Australia, Chile, France, Ireland, and the United States, prompted Cardinal Reinhard Marx, a prominent reformer, to apologize on behalf of the German Catholic Church.
In other news, China's foreign ministry said it would not make concessions to the U.S. on key issues, including Xinjiang and Hong Kong, ahead of high-level meetings between the 2 countries' diplomats in Alaska. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan are set for talks with senior Chinese official Yang Jiechi and Foreign Minister Wang Yi later today. It is the highest-level face-to-face diplomatic meeting between the 2 countries since U.S. President Joe Biden Biden took office. Now, China wants a reset in relations, which were pitched into turmoil by Donald Trump's presidency, which brought a damaging trade war and spats over everything from defense to tech and rights in Hong Kong. But as the diplomats landed in Alaska hours ahead of the talks, a foreign ministry spokesman in Beijing issued a warning to Washington.
中方将在对话中就有关问题表明我们的立场和关切。所有可以谈论的议题都是摆在桌面上的。中方在涉及主权、安全和核心利益的问题上没有妥协让步的余地，维护自身核心利益的决心和意志坚定不移。近日，美方出现一系列涉华消极言行，这发生在中美即将举行高层战略对话前夕，时机耐人寻味。
U.S. Pentagon Chief Lloyd Austin vows to ensure the required capability to defend the alliance to bolster a united front against the nuclear-armed North. He made the comments in South Korea's capital, Seoul, on the second leg of the Asia tour he is making alongside Secretary of State Antony Blinken. Let's take a listen.
You should know, though, that we're focused on ensuring that we have the required capability to defend the alliance and to defend the ROK if and when called upon to do that. And, our efforts to continue to work together routinely to strengthen our capability, I think, is evident in kind of everything we do. And it's what we really spent a lot of time talking about in the last 2 days.
The North remains subject to sanctions over its banned weapons programs, but has also voluntarily closed its borders for more than a year to try to protect itself against the coronavirus pandemic that first emerged in neighboring China. The U.S. envoys on Thursday also oversaw the signing of a new agreement on southern payments towards the costs of the 28,500 U.S. troops stationed in the country to defend it from its neighbor and protect Washington's regional interests.
Meanwhile, North Korea accused the new U.S. administration of adopting, quote, lunatic theory Thursday, ruling out any engagement with Washington unless it changed course as President Joe Biden's top envoys held talks in Seoul. The comments from the North's first Vice Foreign Minister, Choi Soon-hui, came with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Pentagon Chief Lloyd Austin in the South on the second leg of an Asian tour to bolster a united front against the nuclear-armed North and an increasingly assertive China. After Seoul, Blinken will head to Anchorage, Alaska, for the new administration's first talks with China's top diplomats, with Beijing and Washington at loggerheads over issues ranging from trade to rights to territorial disputes. In a statement carried by Pyongyang's official Korean news agency, Choi said there could be no contact nor dialogue between Washington and Pyongyang unless the U.S. rolls back its hostile policy towards her country.
The World Health Organization said Thursday it was particularly worried about the COVID-19 situation in the Balkans and Central Europe, noting that hospitalizations and deaths were among the highest in the world. Regional Director Hans Kluge said the rollout of COVID-19 vaccines had not yet been enough to curb the spread of the transmission across the region. Listen to this.
The current situation is most acute in parts of the region that were successful in controlling the disease in the first 6 months of 2020. It is in Central Europe, the Balkans and the Baltic states where case incidents, hospitalizations and deaths are now among the highest in the world.
We were particularly worried about the epidemiologic situation in the Balkans, as well as many other countries around Central Europe. And just as the regional director said, early introduction of vaccine, and even with rates that are higher than most of the other countries in the WHO Europe region, Serbia is still seeing a very significant increase in transmission. So early status of vaccination does not necessarily vaccinate you against very poor epidemiologic trends, and that's because we're first vaccinating those people in those higher risk age groups. Those are not the people that are driving transmission.
The regional director, however, also stressed that vaccines would eventually offer a way out of the pandemic. The WHO's European region comprises 53 countries and territories and includes Russia and several Central Asian nations.
Staying in Europe, the French capital braced for new restrictions today after a surge in COVID-19 infections that has overwhelmed hospitals and forced the government to consider a much-resisted new lockdown. Prime Minister Jean Castex is to speak on Thursday evening to announce the new measures, which could include a stay-at-home order over the weekend for the 12 million people in the Paris region. President Emmanuel Macron has argued against a third national shutdown, preferring instead to enforce local restrictions to try to slow the spread of the more contagious British variant. As well as registering soaring cases, France has made a sluggish start to its vaccination campaign and suspended the use of the AstraZeneca Oxford jab this week, in line with many European partners. Almost exactly a year ago, Macron ordered France's first national lockdown, which was among the strictest in the world, followed by a second at the end of October. More than 91,000 people have died in France from the disease, according to an official count.
It's been exactly a year today when New Jersey went on lockdown because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Eagle News correspondent El Aguilar returns to Penn Station in Newark, where she was this day a year ago. Watch this.
We're here in Newark, New Jersey, Penn Station. This is the 8th largest train station in North America. It's been a year since we reported the beginning of the global pandemic. At this very day last year, we showed how empty this train and bus station was following a lockdown ordered by the governor. Today, a year after, this place is not as busy as it should be. Just to give you an update of the situation here in New Jersey, since World Health Organization officially categorized coronavirus as global pandemic. There are 751,000 confirmed cases in New Jersey, more than 21,530 confirmed deaths. And in terms of vaccination, more than 2 million first doses were administered. More than 1 million second doses were given. A total of 3,143,000 vaccine doses were administered. In today's press briefing, New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy said mask mandate is still in effect. And effective this Friday, March 19, indoor restaurants, spas, gyms, or health clubs are now allowed to open at 50% capacity.
Second, at 6 a.m. this Friday, please remember that indoor and outdoor gathering limits will increase to 25 and 50 individuals respectively. Additionally, indoor capacity limits for restaurants, gyms, and health clubs, recreational facilities and arcades, and personal care businesses will move to 50% of their listed capacities. As you head into these businesses or to other indoor settings where capacities are expanding, we remind you that our mask mandate remains in effect. We require everyone, patron and business owner alike, to adhere to our public health guidelines. Just because we are able to take these steps to deliberately and responsibly reopen more of our economy and business community does not mean that this pandemic is over, not by a long shot.
Going back to the vaccine rollout, there's only a little more than 3 million vaccines or vaccine doses were administered. New Jersey is not even halfway. New Jersey has 9 million residents living in this state. Reporting from Newark, New Jersey, Penn Station, El Aguilar, we live in interesting times.
Meanwhile, Queen Elizabeth II's oldest son, Prince Charles, criticized the opposition to the coronavirus vaccines as several countries suspended the rollout of AstraZeneca's COVID jab because of suspected links to blood clots. Kathleen Eusebio has the details.
Here is an update in the United Kingdom. Queen Elizabeth II's oldest son and heir on Wednesday criticized opposition to coronavirus vaccines as British ministers sought to calm public fears about safety. Prince Charles said there was no need to fear vaccination, as several countries suspended the rollout of AstraZeneca's COVID jab because of suspected links to blood clots. Who would have thought, for instance, that in the 21st century that there would be a significant lobby opposing vaccination, given its track record in eradicating so many terrible diseases, he said in an article in the Future Healthcare Journal. Charles, who has been vocal in advocating the rollout of the vaccine among more reluctant minority communities in Britain, added, the jab had the potential to protect and liberate some of the most vulnerable in our society from coronavirus. The 72-year-old Prince of Wales, who tested positive for coronavirus last year and suffered mild symptoms, had his first dose of a vaccine in February. His wife Camilla, 73 years old, confirmed on Tuesday she had been given the AstraZeneca shot. "You take what you are given," she said as the pair visited a vaccination center at a North London mosque, adding that she had no ill effects. Britain's government and scientists are increasingly pushing back at concerns about the safety of the vaccine developed by the Anglo-Swedish firm with scientists from Oxford University. European countries, including France, Spain, and Germany, are among those who have halted using the jab, pending a review by the European Medicines Agency. But Professor Jeremy Brown from government advisory body, the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunization, said the move was not logical. Britain has given nearly 25 million people a first dose of a COVID vaccine, including 11 million doses of the AstraZeneca jab, after starting a mass inoculation program in December last year. Vaccinations are seen as central, getting Britain out of lockdown and back to normality. On Tuesday, Prime Minister Boris Johnson wrote in the Times newspaper the vaccine is safe and works extremely well. France and Italy have said they will promptly restart giving the jab if the EMA review allows it. As Britain has surged ahead with its vaccination program, European countries have been accused of playing politics to distract from their sluggish inoculation rollouts. European leaders were angered in January after AstraZeneca announced it was unable to deliver the agreed numbers of jabs to the bloc. Reporting from London, United Kingdom, I'm Kathleen Eusebio. We live in interesting times.
The director of the WHO's Europe branch, Hans Kluge, tells a press conference that the coronavirus is currently claiming more lives than 1 year ago when the pandemic started. He reiterates the WHO's calls for countries to continue administering the AstraZeneca vaccine, while claims that it has caused blood clots in some patients are being investigated. Watch this.
The number of people dying from COVID-19 in Europe is higher now than it was this time last year, reflecting the widespread hold this virus has. Last week, new deaths in the region surpassed 900,000. Every week, more than 20,000 people across the region lose their lives to the virus. We are yet to see the widespread health impact and benefits of vaccines, which I can assure you will come. But for now, we need to remain steadfast in our application of the full range of tools to respond. WHO is assessing the latest safety data, and once completed, the findings will be made public. At this point in time, however, the benefits of the AstraZeneca vaccine far outweigh its risk, and its use should continue to save lives. As of now, we do not know whether some or all of the conditions have been caused by the vaccine or by other coincidental factors.
The news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
This portion is brought to you by Canriv Corporation, your ventilation and air conditioning specialist. Services offered: supply and installation of elevators, escalators, air conditioners, ventilators, jet towel, hand dryers, generators, access control system, factory automation, and modernization. For more info, please contact Ami Kanke at 0915-263-7198 or 0998-900-3224.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
New BMEG Integra 3000 Plus Mixed Pellets and Grains. Gawa sa tamang timpla ng expertly formulated pellets at grains para sa magandang pangangatawan at tamang timbang ng inyong mga manok. BMEG Integra 3000 Plus. Iba ang laking Integra.
Welcome back. U.S. President Joe Biden describes Russian President Vladimir Putin a killer who will pay a price for election meddling. In an interview with ABC News, 78-year-old Biden is asked about a U.S. intelligence report that Putin tried to harm his candidacy in the November 2020 election and promote that of Donald Trump. Let's listen in.
Look, most important thing dealing with foreign leaders, in my experience, and I've dealt with an awful lot of them over my career, is just know the other guy.
So you know Vladimir Putin. You think he's a killer?
Mm-hmm. I do.
So what price must he pay?
The price he's going to pay, well, you'll see shortly.
Director of National Intelligence came out with a report today saying that Vladimir Putin authorized operations during the election to denigrate you, support President Trump, undermine our elections, divide our society. What price must he pay?
He will pay a price. We had a long talk, he and I. I know him relatively well. And the conversation started off, I said, I know you and you know me. If I establish this occurred, then be prepared.
You said you know he doesn't have a soul.
I did say that to him, yes. And his response was, we understand one another. I wasn't being a wise guy. I was alone with him in his office. That's how it came about. It was when President Bush had said, I've looked in his eyes and saw a soul. I said, look in your eyes, and I don't think you have a soul. And looked back at me and said, we understand each other. I'm not going to, by the way, we ought to be able, that trite expression, walk and chew gum at the same time. There are places where it's in our mutual interest to work together. That's why I renewed the START agreement with him. That occurred while he's doing this. But that's overwhelming in the interest of humanity that we diminish the prospect of a nuclear exchange.
Now, in another development, Russia called its U.S. ambassador back to Moscow for consultations on Wednesday after President Joe Biden described President Vladimir Putin as a killer who would pay a price for election meddling, prompting the first major diplomatic crisis for the new American president. Russia's ambassador in the U.S. will depart Washington Saturday for urgent consultations in Moscow, according to the embassy, warning that bilateral ties were on the brink of collapse. On Thursday, Konstantin Kosachev, a deputy head at the Russian parliament's upper house, said that Washington should apologize. He said such statements are unacceptable in any circumstances and will inevitably sharply damage our bilateral ties, he wrote on Facebook. Moscow last recalled its U.S. envoy for consultations in 1998 over a Western bombing campaign in Iraq.
Tanzania's main opposition leader, Tundu Lissu, said Thursday that President John Magufuli had died from the coronavirus, calling his death, quote, poetic justice, after the strongman leader downplayed the severity of the virus. Watch this.
Thoughts about this question. I have received news of President Magufuli's passing without any surprise, to be honest. I had expected this all along. The only thing that surprises me is the fact that they continue to lie up to now. Even now that he's dead, his government continues to lie. Magufuli died of corona. That is one. Number two, Magufuli did not die this evening. I have information from basically the same sources which told me that he was gravely ill. I have information that Magufuli has been dead since Wednesday of last week.
The country's vice president announced late Wednesday that Magufuli, who had not been seen in public for nearly 3 weeks, had died in a hospital in Dar es Salaam from a heart condition he had suffered from for a decade. Magufuli's unexplained absence from public view had fueled wild rumors of his ill health, with his opponents insisting he had contracted COVID-19 and his illness was being kept under wraps. The government repeatedly denied those allegations. Magufuli was one of a handful of world leaders who scoffed at the coronavirus, championing alternative medicines and calling for prayer instead of face masks. The government stopped the publication of statistics in April 2020 when the country had recorded a total of 509 cases and 16 deaths. And later, Magufuli claimed prayer had beaten the disease. Opposition leader Lissu said it was, quote, poetic justice that Magufuli had succumbed to a disease he ignored. He said, quote, President Magufuli did not wear a face mask. He actually denigrated anyone who wore face masks. He did not believe in vaccines. He did not believe in science, said Lissu, who was shot multiple times in 2017 in what he called a politically motivated assassination attempt. He also said that Magufuli placed his faith in faith healers and herbal concoctions of dubious medical value. And what has happened, happened. He went down with corona.
In other news, Myanmar's ousted leader Aung San Suu Kyi will be hit with fresh corruption charges from the country's military junta, a decision slammed by her lawyer as groundless and illogical. The new military regime has already issued several criminal charges against the Nobel laureate since she was detained alongside top political allies last month, including owning unlicensed walkie-talkies and violating coronavirus restrictions. On Wednesday night, military broadcaster Muawari aired a video of a Myanmar businessman, as you see here, confessing to giving her a total of $550,000 over several years. Maung Wick said he had donated money to senior government figures for the good of his business. Aung San Suu Kyi said committed corruption and authorities are preparing to charge her according to anti-corruption law, an announcer said during the broadcast. This is not the first time corruption allegations have been lodged against her. Last week, a junta spokesman said a now-detained chief minister had admitted to giving her $600,000 and more than 10 kilograms of gold bars. Myanmar has been in uproar since February's coup, with hundreds of thousands of protesters flooding the streets, demanding a return to democracy and the release of Suu Kyi. The junta has justified the move by claiming electoral fraud in elections last November that were won by Suu Kyi's party in a landslide, and security forces have increasingly stepped up lethal force against demonstrators. Local monitoring group, the Assistance Association for Political Prisoners, has reported the killing of more than 210 people in crackdowns across the country.
In other news, Sicily's Mount Etna, one of the world's most active volcanoes, is erupting, sending columns of lava and clouds of ash and rock into the air. Take a look. According to USA Today, Mount Etna has been erupting almost every other day since mid-February, and the active volcano shows no signs of slowing down. While these recent eruptions were impressive, they caused minor disruptions rather than major damage to the surrounding area, according to the NASA statement. Ash coming from Etna temporarily closed the Catania airport and was deposited across Sicily, for example, and local residents had to deal with falling ash and rocks.
Back to the pandemic situation. Papua New Guinea will shutter schools, limit non-essential movement, and make mask wearing mandatory, according to the country's pandemic controller, in a bid to stem a COVID-19 surge that has pushed the fragile health system to the brink of collapse. Take a look. Now, all the schools in the country will shut down at the end of this week following a sharp increase in cases. Pandemic controller David Manning said as part of a month-long strategy of aggressive interventions. In the capital, Port Moresby, people will be asked not to leave home except for medical employment and business purposes, and shops will have to close by 8 p.m. Provincial lockdowns could also be introduced. On Tuesday, the country reported a record 128 new cases, and experts fear widespread transmission as testing levels remain low in the country of 9 million. There are ominous signs the surge has already overwhelmed the country's perennially strained health sector.
Please don't go away. Eagle News will be right back.
Events happen around us all the time, in our community, in our country, around the world. Events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced. Eagle News, because we live in interesting times.
Lima na ang nakaabang. Sino kaya ang makakalamang upang kunin ang huling pwesto sa March Monthly Finals?
Alam mo, pag hindi mo kasi ine-enjoy at nararamdaman yung awitin na yan, parang bitin, no? Parang sa rock band. Pumasok ka na kaya sa rock band.
This is Tag-Isa ng Galing Part 2, Singing Edition.
Welcome back to the news. The Philippine Overseas Employment Administration, or POEA, is coordinating with the families of 10 Filipino seafarers who were reportedly abandoned by the shipping company that hired them in Fiji. The POEA and the OWA, or the Overseas Workers Welfare Administration, are coordinating with the families of their next of kin on what they can provide to the needs of the seafarers, POEA Chief Bernard Olalia said in a virtual forum on Thursday. Olalia said the Department of Foreign Affairs is working on the immediate repatriation of the Filipino workers. At the same time, he reported that they have suspended the license of the Manning Agency, Able Maritime Manning Agency, for its failure to file a report on the monitoring of the seafarers. Olalia noted that the Manning Agency has been barred from recruiting seafarers until the suspension has been lifted.
The tiny Pacific nation of Palau has announced plans to open a travel bubble with Taiwan in a move it hopes will boost the tourism-reliant economy. The date has finally arrived. It's time to open up, President Suranjo Whips told reporters late Wednesday, almost exactly a year after the nation closed its borders. Whip said he would take a charter flight to Taipei later this month and return on April 1 with a group of 110 Taiwanese tourists. From there, the plan is to gradually have 16 flights a week on the route, a major lifeline for an economy that, before the pandemic, relied on tourism for more than half its gross domestic product. Palau, which lies about 1,000 kilometers east of the Philippines, is one of the few places on Earth never to have recorded a case of COVID-19. The travel bubble is partly due to Palau's special relationship with Taiwan. It is one of only 50 nations worldwide to offer Taipei diplomatic recognition in the face of China's long-standing claim that Taiwan is part of its territory. Whip said strict measures would be enforced to protect Palau's population of 18,000. He also pointed to Taiwan's success in containing the virus, with just 990 confirmed cases and 10 deaths in a population of 23.6 million. Taiwanese visitors must undergo pre-flight coronavirus checks. They can travel only in tour groups and are barred from making individual excursions. Contact with Palau locals will be kept to a minimum, with tourists staying at designated hotels, eating in separate restaurant areas, and being allowed to shop only at set times. Whips acknowledged no system was foolproof, but said Taiwanese health authorities had calculated, but the chance of COVID-19 reaching Palau via the travel bubble was 1 in 4 million.
Here we go. After months of pandemic delays, Nintendo's first ever theme park featuring a Mario Kart ride in a real-life Bowser's Castle opened in Japan on Thursday to delighted fans. Take a look.
「思っていた頃からほぼ1年近くですね、遅れて開けれたということで、まあ本当に感無量だし嬉しいんですが、なんだろう、この1年間はでも決して無駄ではなくて、実は任天堂さんが求めてくる非常に高い、彼らが求めるそのファンに向けて、そしてブランドのために作りたいと思っているその世界観を追求するために、この1年間っていうのは非常にやっぱり有効だったなと思います。
The attraction, whose bright block-like surroundings are straight out of the classic Super Mario games, is part of the existing Universal Studios Japan amusement park in the western city of Osaka. The new zone, called Super Nintendo World, had originally been expected to draw big crowds last year ahead of the Tokyo 2020 Olympics, which was also postponed by the coronavirus. But its launch was pushed back to February and then delayed again as Japan's government declared a state of emergency in early 2021 to curb spiking cases. Music from the popular Mario games plays throughout the park, and a smartphone-linked wristband allows visitors to collect virtual points by punching blocks, just like the Italian plumber. Augmented reality goggles attached to a plastic red visor are used in the Mario Kart ride, one of the park's main draws that promises to bring the racing game to life. The ride follows a track around the foreboding castle of Mario's enemy Bowser, an evil turtle, but each seat has a steering wheel and players can collect and shoot items at opponents. The zone also boasts a ride based on the cute green dinosaur Yoshi, a Peach's castle, Mario-themed restaurants, and life-size characters from the Mushroom Kingdom.
In other business news, Google will invest more than $7 billion in the United States this year and create thousands of jobs, according to the tech giant's CEO. We plan to invest over $7 billion in offices and data centers across the U.S. and create at least 10,000 new full-time Google jobs in the U.S. this year, according to Sundar Pichai in a statement. Pichai said Google wants to be a part of America's economic recovery from the pandemic and is investing in some communities that are new to the company, as well as expanding in others across 19 states. The announcement comes as Google faces pressure from dozens of U.S. states that accuse the internet giant of abusing its search dominance to eliminate competition. Google will spend $1 billion in its home state of California.
May I ask what you're doing? Trimming the logo here.
The creative director for Tokyo's Olympic ceremonies resigned on Thursday for suggesting a female comedian appears as a pig just weeks after the game's chief stepped down over insulting remarks about women. Hiroshi Sasaki announced his decision after a report on Wednesday revealed his proposal that Naomi Watanabe, a popular celebrity and plus-size model, appears as an Olympic wearing pig ears at the opening ceremony. Watch this.
容姿を笑い物にするような発言、これは大変不適切だというふうに思っております。謝罪文の中で佐々木氏も本人も侮辱だったというふうに述べておりまして、私もやはりこういった容姿に対して侮辱するような発言というものは絶対にあってはならないというふうに思っております。
It is just the latest headache for the coronavirus-delayed games, which are struggling for public support mid-pandemic and were left reeling by former chief Yoshiro Mori's sexist comments last month. Tokyo Olympic chief Seiko Hashimoto, who replaced Mori last month, told reporters she was shocked by Sasaki's remarks. Japan's government also weighed in on the row, with deputy spokesman Naoki Okada calling Sasaki's suggestion completely inappropriate.
And staying in sports, let's get the latest NBA action stories from Tenny Sumagi. Tenny.
The Jazz bounced back from Sunday's double-digit loss to the Warriors to beat the Celtics on Tuesday. The victory gave head coach Quinn Snyder his 300th career victory, thanks to the dominance of Rudy Gobert and Jordan Clarkson off the bench.
One of the things, and we've talked about Rudy, is his activity, his ability to do multiple things on defense and to make multiple effort plays. You know, and when we're solid, the other four guys are on the court, you know, he has a chance to be even more impactful. And I thought, you know, really the biggest thing with Rudy is our ability to communicate with him and with whoever's in the game or in the action, because that allows him to make plays.
I think we did a great job playing defense in fourth, and I think, you know, we did a good job for the most part at the end, you know, executing, and you know we were about to get to the line because they were fouling, and when we get the stops and we set our defense, it was hard for them to score in half court.
You know, Rudy's a pretty big target, and you know, I've had a chance to, you know, build this relationship with him. You know, he coming to me every other time out, telling me, you know, what the reads are, and stuff like that. So us having that open dialogue makes everything easier. And I know if you know, I ever get in trouble, I could just throw it to the moon. I mean, he's like 7'3", and you know, he's pretty long, so. If anybody switches out, he'll be able to catch it and make a play as well.
The Celtics came close within 3 points with 2 minutes and 35 seconds left in the fourth quarter. but Donovan Mitchell's three-pointer and a pair of free throws by Gobert gave the Jazz the victory. Jason Tatum finished with 29 points for the Celtics.
Especially like a team like the Jazz, I think what makes them really good is they, more often than not, they just make the right play, make the right read. And, we're more than capable of it. It's just doing it more often than not.
In other news, LeBron James and his business partner Maverick Carter have agreed to be part owners of the Boston Red Sox. The pair are the first black owners to be part of the team's ownership group.
As far as the Red Sox, obviously a historical franchise, and we know the history of the World Series championships they've brought back home to Boston, and the players that's come through there, and the legacy that they hold in that area. So I think for me and for my partner Maverick to be the first two black men to be a part of that ownership group in the history of that franchise, it gives me and people that look like me hope and inspiration that they can be in a position like that as well, that it can be done. It gives my kids at my I Promise school more and more inspiration as well. But it's a great day for myself, for my family, for my school, for my business partner Maverick Carter, and everyone that has something to do with our group.
Tune in to Eagle News for more stories and highlights of the NBA throughout the season. In New York, Tenny Sumagi, Eagle News, we live in interesting times.
It is the hottest new exhibition in town, an immersive digital art experience filled with futuristic light installations that doubles up as a sauna complex. The sweaty but spectacular art show in Tokyo, which opens Monday, allows visitors to experience art in their finest mental state. People must wear swimsuits but can put indoor clothing on top to enter the exhibition, which contains 7 saunas of various temperatures lit up atmospherically in bold colors from magenta to deep green. After a few minutes relaxing in the heat, followed by a cold shower to pick the senses, they can wander through different rooms to marvel at the artworks in a so-called sauna trance. Exhibits include fluttering butterfly illuminations, solidified light crystals, and a large red sphere that radiates through the darkness. Some of the viewing spaces also feature streams of cold water or cooling mist to create a physical as well as esoteric impression. The exhibition, called Reconnect Art with Rinkan Sauna, is the latest offering from the Japanese art collective Team Lab, which collaborated with video app TikTok on the project. Internationally renowned for their innovative digital art, Team Lab's work combines projections, sound, and carefully designed spaces to create otherworldly experiences. That is gorgeous. I would love to visit that.
It's a sauna inside a museum.
Something like that.
Something like that.
Something
yeah.
like that. Would love to visit that, but after the pandemic. This is scary. Okay, that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I am CJ Hero. See you again tomorrow.
And at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.
This program is supported by BMEG Integra 3000 Plus, Mixed Pallet and Grades. Iba ang laki